My brother had only days left to live. Every evening, I sat beside his hospice bed until I noticed an elderly woman across the hall who never had a single visitor. One small act of kindness led to a warning that saved my family from a devastating tragedy. I thought she was confused. I was wrong. Stay until the end because what happened that night changed my life forever. QQ. My name is Nathan Mercer. 2 years ago, my older brother Caleb was admitted to a quiet hospice center outside Cedar Ridge after losing his battle with cancer. The doctors had already prepared us for the worst. Every day, I drove almost an hour after work just to sit with him. We laughed about old memories. We cried without saying much. Every goodbye felt like it could be the last. Across the hallway lived an elderly woman named Eleanor Ashford. She was always sitting near her window looking outside. Nurses greeted her kindly, but nobody ever visited. Not a son. Not a daughter. Not even an old friend. Her room stayed painfully silent while other patients welcomed family every weekend. One afternoon, I noticed she was struggling to reach a glass of water. I helped her and we started talking. The next day, I brought her a fresh blueberry muffin from a bakery near the hospice. Her eyes filled with tears. She smiled and said nobody had remembered her favorite muffin in over 20 years. That simple conversation became a daily routine. I would spend time with my brother and then visit Eleanor for 15 minutes. She told me stories about teaching children, raising a family, and losing almost everyone she loved. She never complained. She simply appreciated having someone willing to listen. One evening, my nephew Ryan arrived from another state to visit his father. The room was full of emotions. Before leaving, I stopped by Eleanor's room to say goodnight. She suddenly grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "Drive home tonight if you can." Her voice was calm but serious. I smiled politely and told her. I planned to return home the next morning because I was exhausted. She repeated the words, "Please, go tonight." I could not explain why, but something about her expression made me change. I hugged my brother goodbye and started the drive home through heavy rain. When I reached my neighborhood, flashing emergency lights filled the street. My heart nearly stopped. A broken gas line had caused a major explosion in the apartment building directly beside mine less than an hour earlier. Firefighters said if I had arrived at my usual time, I would have parked exactly where burning debris had collapsed. Several nearby apartments suffered severe damage. I stood frozen in disbelief. The next morning, I rushed back to the hospice to thank Eleanor. But when I entered her room, the bed was empty. A nurse quietly told me Eleanor had peacefully passed away only 30 minutes after I left the previous evening. I asked whether she had spoken to anyone else that night. The nurse shook her head. "Only you." Before leaving, the nurse handed me a sealed envelope with my name written on it. Inside was a handwritten letter. It read, "Kindness always returns when you least expect it. You reminded me that the world still has good people. Never ignore your heart when it tells you to protect the people you love." The letter also included instructions for contacting Eleanor's attorney. Weeks later, I learned Eleanor had left a charitable donation in my brother's name to help families who could not afford hospice care. She had not left me money. She left something far more valuable. A reminder that compassion can change lives in ways we may never fully understand. My brother passed away peacefully. A few days later, knowing his name would continue helping other families. Today, every year on his birthday, I buy 2 blueberry muffins. One for my brother. One for Eleanor. And every time I remember that one simple act of kindness may have saved my life. Some people enter our lives only a moment, but leave behind a lesson that lasts forever. Never underestimate kindness because the smallest act can change a destiny you never saw coming. Sometimes the greatest miracle begins with a conversation no one else was willing to have.